The Scout was legendary, so much so that VW has started a brand new company to design and market a new electric version with an all-new factory. With its contemporaries, the Jeep CJ and Ford Bronco, it defined a generation of off-road ready machines while positioning itself as the everyday alternative. But the Scout was just one product that went on to have almost a life of its own in a diverse lineup from International Harvester. It's hard to overstate just how huge International was at its peak. While light trucks were just a small portion of their business, their sprawling conglomerate was once larger than General Electric, Ford, and General Motors. The company was 100 years old before they ever introduced their off-roaders. So let's start at the beginning and briefly overview the company, its history, and its many different product markets. Well, welcome back to All Cars, y'all. If you are new here, my name is John, and this is a far too brief history of International Harvester and the Scout. It all started humbly in 1800s Virginia. Cyrus Hall McCormick was born in 1809 to a weaver, farmer, and inventor in the Blue Ridge Mountains. His dad had worked for 28 years to create a horse-drawn mechanical reaper to replace the back-breaking manual work, but he could never get his design working reliably. Cyrus took up the project and in 1831 gave his first demonstrations of his patentable design. Patrick Bell of Scotland had created a machine that was pushed by horses but was never patented, and Cyrus's design was pulled and cut the grain to the side. He received his patent in 1834 but only made a few for the next 10 years, tweaking the design and experimenting with them on his farm. By 1847, he and his brother moved to Chicago to establish the McCormick Harvesting Machine Company. Later, another brother joined the business, and critically, in 1848, the Patent Office noted similar designs by at least two other inventors dated back to 1831. Still, the company grew, and Cyrus set up a modern company with production, marketing, and sales departments. They offered deferred payments and money-back guarantees, advertising extensively, and doing personal demonstrations. In 1855, McCormick filed a patent infringement lawsuit against one John Manny for his Manny Reaper. As the case was to be tried in Illinois, one lawyer Manny hired was some legal hack named Abraham Lincoln. And Manny won on appeal in the Supreme Court. In 1856, Cyrus got a patent for an improved Reaper and began licensing production around the nation. By then, they were making 4,000 units a year, $1 million in profit, and personally earning $300,000, investing in real estate as well as other businesses like the newspaper Chicago Times, railroads, and South American mining, all while expanding international worldwide. Cyrus died in 1884 with his son, Cyrus Jr., taking over the company. One of their competitors was William Deering. He was born in 1826 in South Paris, Maine, and he inherited a wool mill, invested in farmland in Illinois, and then in 1870 partnered with others to manufacture the Marsh Harvester, as well as a reaper with an automatic twine binder. By 1880, they were selling 3,000 with profits over 400,000, and the company was moved to Chicago to establish the Deering Harvester Works. With multiple manufacturers competing brutally against each other, the legendary financier J.P. Morgan saw an opportunity. He'd provide the financing and combine McCormick, Deering, and three other smaller firms of Milwaukee Harvesting, Plano Manufacturing, and Warder, Bushnell, and Glessner together into one dominant agricultural producer and name it International Harvester. IH was formed in 1902 and was immediately valued at $150 million. By 1908, the new company was producing 700,000 harvesters worldwide. What happened next was decades of expansion, primarily by buying other companies. From those early years, IH offered large tractors under a multitude of names, including their 1915 1020 and 1530 models, and in the 30s expanded into tracked crawler tractors used for agricultural and construction. These heavy tractors received updates and new models and innovations through the decades until the last one was produced in 1985. Famously, in 1924, they released their Farmall general-purpose tractor to compete against the Fordson with high ground clearance and a tricycle configuration. Smaller, lighter, and durable, Farmall grew from a single model to a model line and became the leading brand through the 40s and 50s. Initially designated the F-Series tractors, in 1939 they began naming them by letter, and in 1954 lightly refreshed the lineup and changed the names to three-digit numbers. Importantly, in 1947, IH introduced the Cub as their smallest tractor, continuing it until 1979 largely unchanged. IH was known for selling other farm-related equipment as well, in keeping with its founding, offering balers, cotton pickers, wagons, combines, spreaders, and much more. During World War II, the majority of the company's output was focused on the war effort, producing a wide variety of products such as wheeled and tracked tractors, trucks, half-tracks, torpedoes, and more, and at the end of the war was ranked 33rd in wartime contribution. But the company continually expanded outside its agricultural and heavy industry roots as well. With the electrification of rural America, IH introduced a line of home appliances. Much like GM with Frigidaire, Nash with Kelvinator, and Crosley with Crosley, IH had their own refrigeration unit and released refrigerators, air conditioners, and freezers. Originally aiming for commercial-grade business like walk-in freezers and coolers for farms, they expanded quickly to the kitchen in 1947. Inspired by Betty Crocker and with advertising focused on women with the tagline, "It's Femineered," they created the character Irma Harding as a spokesperson. Unfortunately, the refrigeration division was drowning in debt, and in 1955, less than 10 years after introduction, the division was sold to Whirlpool. In 1961, IH further entered the residential market with a lineup tailored for rural residents with large lawns and private gardens. Taking the previously mentioned small tractor, the Cub, they built the Cub Cadet brand, offering compost shredders, tillers, power washers, and their garden tractors, with a wide selection of mower, snowblower, front loaders, plows, and carts available. And finally, on to the trucks. After forming the company in 1902, in 1907, International entered the light truck market with its first product, the IHC Model A Auto Wagon, also known as the Auto Buggy. Designed to help farmers get to town down the poor quality rural roads of the time, it had high ground clearance, an optional rear seat that could be removed, and a horizontally opposed two-cylinder engine making about 14 horsepower. Instantly successful that first year, they sold 73 units, which sounds underwhelming until you consider that only 1,000 motor trucks were produced in the US in 1907. The next year, they sold 725, and by 1909 sold 2,465. In 1910, it was renamed the Motor Truck, and in 1914, the name International was applied. Sometime after 1915, IH introduced their first heavy-duty truck with a capacity of 5 tons. In 1921, they converted a plant in Springfield, Ohio to build their first pneumatic-tired trucks. In 1928, IH was selling over 39,000 trucks a year, and in 1923, they built a new plant in Fort Wayne, Indiana to build their heavy-duty models. In 1939, their Indianapolis plant began to manufacture truck engines exclusively. And in 1938, they introduced the Metro line of delivery vehicles. Through the 30s, variations of the early trucks such as the C and D lines continued, but it was 1940 when IH entered the modern era of trucks with its K line. Spanning 42 models and 142 wheelbase and load ratings, this lineup started with the K1 half-ton up to the K14, good for 90,000 pounds. The K1 had a 214 cubic inch engine making 82 horsepower and 160 pound-feet of torque, while the K8, for example, had a 361 cubic inch six-cylinder making 126 horsepower and 282 pound-feet. The KB was introduced in 1947 with a wider, lower grille with wings on the KB1 through the KB5. The K series was superseded by the L series in 1949. Ranging from light pickups to delivery vehicles and up to tractor trailers, they were designated L number, with L110 being the pickup, L153 being a bus configuration, and L165 a tractor model. Further, adding a letter after the L designated a specific model like LM for the Metro delivery van or LB for milk delivery, LC for cab over, and LF indicating 4-driven wheels, but not necessarily 4-wheel drive. The KB line got 2 new engines, a 220 cubic inch and a 240 cubic inch silver diamond inline sixes, with a 269 cubic inch i6 carrying over as well, and a 372, 406, and 450 cubic inch options in the even heavier models. Importantly, this generation introduced marketing names which continued for the next 20 years: the Roadliner, the Lodestar, and the Schoolmaster. In 1953, the R Series debuted, a development of the L Series. Once again spanning light trucks up to tractor-trailers, they shared the cab of their predecessors, and in 1955, the light and medium-duty trucks were renamed the S Series. Prior to 1953, IH had produced panel vans which could have windows and seats added to function as a station wagon, but with the R Series, they introduced the Travelall. Based on the 1/2-ton R110 truck and with a 115-inch wheelbase, it used the same 100-horsepower, 220 cubic inch silver diamond i6 with just 2 doors. In 1956, they added 4-wheel drive as an option. Through the Travelall's generations, it closely followed the pickups in development and slotted size-wise between the larger Suburban and the smaller Jeep Wagoneer. In 1957, corresponding with the 50th anniversary of the company, the A series of trucks was introduced, with the A standing for anniversary. Largely a rebodying of the light and medium S-duty trucks, the cab was widened, running boards removed, and panoramic windshield, all giving it a more contemporary appearance. A step-side bed was standard, but a new bonus load bed was an option. Notably, the heavier duty lines adopted their marketing names, such as Lodestar, Fleet Star, and Paystar. The Travelall was redesigned with the new truck, and in 1958 added the first rear passenger door 9 years before the Suburban. It now offered the A100, A110, and A120 versions, with 4-wheel drive as an option on the 3/4-ton 120. The Silver Diamond 220 and 240 CI engines continued, with output ranging from 113 to 115 horsepower. In 1959, the B Series replaced the A Series, now offering either a 304 or 345 cubic inch V8 as options, lightly restyled with 2 headlights on each side, and the Travelall got the new engines along with power steering and brakes. 1961 was a big year for International. The new C-Series trucks were introduced with a new chassis and a new independent front torsion bar suspension. The changes gave it a better ride, and the outside was modernized with headlights side by side with a concave egg crate grille. Notably, the heavier duty versions were not replaced, leaving just the C100 to C130s in the range. With this new design came the new Travelette. While the name had been used since the A-Series trucks in 1957, using the body of a Travelall to create a new 3-door cab, years before Dodge, Ford, or Chevy created their own. But with the new C-Series, they added a driver's side door, making the Travelette the first American-made 4-door, 4-wheel drive pickup. With the new 119-inch wheelbase, the Travelall was updated while carrying over most of the body design from the previous generation, although the front was redesigned with the horizontal quad headlights and grille. And historically, the Scout was introduced. With only the Jeep in the market, in 1958, International began to consider a competitor, even considering using the defunct Henry J tooling at one point. It was decided flat body panels were what the segment desired, a shape was decided on, and it was proposed that Goodyear produce plastic body panels. These were ultimately deemed too expensive, so they settled on steel, and in total, it took only 24 months to bring it to market in 1960 as a 1961 model. The first generation was the Scout 80, initially with removable side windows and a fold-down windshield, and powered by an International 152 i4 engine. It had a removable top and could be used as a pickup, runabout, or all-weather SUV. Later, they experimented with a camper option, raising the roof to standing height and with fold-out bunks. In 1963, the C-Series pickups were renamed the C900 to C1500, the front redesigned with single headlights and a convex egg crate grille, and then in 1965 it became the D-Series, with the Travelall and Travelette following the changes. The C900 was notable as sitting on a short 107-inch wheelbase with the 152 four-cylinder making 93 horsepower and with minimal equipment. It sold poorly and was canceled after just 3 years. In 1967, the 4 was replaced with their 266 cubic inch V8 making 154 horsepower, and in 68, AMC's 232 cubic inch i6 replaced the International 6, and between 63 and 68 there was an unadvertised, special order only 301 cubic inch i6 diesel offered with 112 horsepower and 228 pound-feet of torque. In 65, the Scout 800 replaced the Scout 80 with updated dash and improved instruments and heating, bucket seats, optional rear seats, and a now fixed windshield, and much more, including those 266 and 232 engines following their introduction in the trucks, while the base engine was International's Comanche 152-4, making 93 horsepower, and an optional turbocharged version making 111. The 800 was updated in 68 to the 800A with even more comfort options, lightly revised styling, and improved drivetrain. For 1969, the truck lineup got refreshed with the D-Line trucks, commonly known as the Light Line series. Mostly a rebodied C-series, the new styling was changed to align with the popular Scout. This lineup offered 4 V8s in 266, 304, 345, and 392 cubic inches, 3, 4, and 5-speed manual transmission, and a 3-speed automatic, as well as AMC's 232 cubic inch 6. Model designations ran from the 1000 to the 1500, and some were available as a bare chassis or with dual rear wheels. With 7 different available wheelbases, the revised Travelall used a 119-inch frame, and the new Travelette used either a 149 or 164-inch wheelbase. In 1971, the Light Line was refreshed with new numbering running from 1010 to 1510 and became the first in the segment to offer ABS on the rear wheels. For 74, the naming changed again with 100, 150, 200, or 500 depending on the weight rating. There were minor styling changes, but on two-wheel drive models, the previous torsion bar front suspension was changed to a double wishbone. For 73 and 74, IH offered the Wagon Master, taking a Travelall and making the rear a bed. The difference from the Travelette was the Wagon Master bed was integrated into the body and just 5 feet in length, nearly 20 years before Chevy revisited the concept with the Avalanche. The Scout 2 began production in 1971 and lasted with nearly yearly updates until 1980. Over its run, it offered 7 different engines, including a 196 cubic inch IH4, 2 AMC 6s, 2 IH V8s, 2 3.2-liter Nissan diesels, along with 2 manuals, 2 automatics, and 2 wheelbases. 100-inch for the Scout and 118 for the Terra and the Traveler. While two-wheel drive was available, few were ordered without four-wheel drive. Specifically, the Terra was a pickup version of the Scout designed to replace the poorly received Wagon Master and historically is one of the first midsize pickups. All Scouts had their gross vehicle weight increased to 6,200 pounds, done so to hit a loophole in emission regulations and to avoid having catalytic converters at least until their last year in 1980. The Scout 2 had multiple special editions offered, as well as international experimenting with Scout-based minivans, station wagons, dune buggies, and more. IH had focused more on the agricultural and industrial markets with their trucks, never achieving more than 9.5% market share, and at least partially held back by the fact that you had to visit a truck dealer to buy your truck or a Scout, whereas other trucks like the F-150 or Chevy's offerings could be found at a nice, friendly dealership that was tailored for consumers. And as their trucks tended to be heavier and with poorer fuel economy than their competitors, they were especially hard hit by the '73 oil crisis. The last of International's light trucks were built in 1975, although the Scout line continued until 1980. By the 1970s, IH was struggling. Sales were strong, but profits were weak, and the company was spread too thin in too many markets. In 1977, they named Archie McCardell as the CEO, who went on an aggressive cost-cutting campaign, canceling unprofitable products and scaling back production. Profits improved but angered the unions, and in 1979 they went on strike. The company initially took a hard line, expecting the union to cave, but the strike lasted 172 days until April 20th, 1980, and at the time was the UAW's longest strike and is still their fourth longest in history. IH lost nearly $480 million in the first half of the year, while sales slid 47%, and they were forced to take out loans, increasing their short-term debt to $1 billion, just as the recession of the early 80s were upon them. By 1981, their total debt was $4.5 billion, and they were forced to refinance nearly all of it to avoid bankruptcy. McCardell was fired on May 3, 1982, but the losses continued, losing $2.4 billion between 1980 and 1982. After ending the light trucks in 75, they ended the Scout in 1980. In 82, the Payline Construction Division was sold to Dresser Industries, the Gas Turbine Division to Caterpillar, and the Cub Cadet line to MTD Products. In 1985, its historic Agricultural Division was sold to Tenneco, the parent company of rival Case. What remained, including the truck and engine divisions, were renamed as Navistar International in 1986. In 2016, Trayton SE, VW's truck division, bought a 16.6% stake in Navistar, and in 2021 it acquired the entire company, renaming it as just Navistar, and then in 2024 rebranding it once again as International Motors. It was through this acquisition that VW got the rights to the Scout trademark. In 2021, VW announced they were considering reviving the Scout name. In October of 2024, they revealed two vehicles, the Terra and the Traveler SUV, as EVs with range extenders, with Scout as a new, separate brand without dealers, and a new factory being built in South Carolina with a 2027 expected release. The whole story of International is both surprisingly long, surprisingly large, and more than a little bit sad. When I was a teenager, my best friend, his father had initially an International Scout, which was unreliable and rusty, and he replaced it with a Jeep CJ5. And that was primarily my knowledge of International. I haven't had a lot of experience, but reading through this and doing the research, it's amazing how many individual products I knew about that were kind of the International universe from Cub Cadet and beyond, including things like the Lodestar and the Paystar. I've heard of all of these and just pieced it together into one massive company that rivaled the biggest in the world out there. But they got weighed down by their own success. They tended to want to develop inside, which left them kind of behind, and specifically for their trucks. And it's kind of amazing through all of this history, especially in the trucks, how far ahead they were of the curve in so many things. Whether it was adding extra doors onto a full-size SUV years before GM did with the Suburban, whether it was adding doors to the trucks and creating the first American-built four-door, four-wheel drive truck. On and on, they had these little innovations along the way. And I have to admit, in doing the research for all this, I found myself thinking, what if they had at some point thought, what about taking our four-wheel drive systems and putting a car body on it, just like the AMC Eagle? Could they have been saved? Well, I don't know, but it's kind of a shame they didn't roll the trucks out into its own company, or that there wasn't a competitor to buy it instead of just shutting it down. I'll never know if there were conversations that never actually happened, but it's kind of sad that this truck and these SUVs that are so well respected, and here we are decades later, people still love the Scout. And I guess the end of this is that little glimmer of happiness that it's being brought back. The new Scouts, they are EVs, they have range extenders, they are Volkswagens, but they're not. They're a brand new separate company. And it's exciting to see them come out because, gosh darn, I really like them and like how they match up, at least on paper and what we've heard, with other manufacturers like Rivian. So I appreciate y'all being here, and a special thanks to my patrons who make silly videos like this possible. If you support independent auto creators like this and love reading histories or cool little facts and trivia about the auto world, please check us out. If I've earned it, please give me a thumbs up and a subscribe. And if you did have an international, a scout or a truck or a travelall, whatever it happened to be, reminisce with us down in the comments below. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you being here.